like most people, I started to mute it and scroll down. And something about the first few seconds of that video just caught me, and I watched the rest of it, and then I lost my entire weekend just watching YouTube videos of Andrew Yang. And then I did what any rational person would do, and I decked out my Jeep in Yang 2020 decals and headed for Iowa. I have to tell you guys about Andrew. I'm not going to go on too long. I just want to say, if anyone, after you hear Andrew, and you will, wants to volunteer, we have a volunteer table right here, and we have our great staff that would love to talk to you about volunteering. So stop by after we're done here. I'd also like to say thank you to the American Legion Post for allowing us to, so we really appreciate that. And now I would like to invite the Jasper County Democratic Vice Co-Chair and retired Navy veteran, my shipmate, Jim Frank.
Well, I am going to be brief also, because I'm not the one that you want to listen to. But I have been following Andrew Yang since he got on this the campaign trail. He
Jim,
brings
speak up.
what?
My mic's not on.
Sorry.
Don, just hold it close.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear myself now. Okay. Well, I have followed Andrew Yang since he got on the campaign trail. He is, number one, a successful businessman. But he has brought a different perspective into that area than I've known before. He has toured the country with Venture for America. He has talked to people about their struggles, what they need, and he is bringing 21st century solutions to 21st century problems. And he is laser focused on bringing humanity back into politics. I don't think I really want to say too much more, because I want to listen to him. So, there he is. Okay. Hey, welcome, Andrew Yang.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Iowa. I just got here last night. It's great to be back. Very special day. It is my 45th birthday. Which means I'm about 25% through my life. No, I'm kidding.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andrew. Happy birthday to you.
That's so beautiful. Thank you all. It's great to be back here in Iowa. I woke up this morning to the news that my friend Cory Booker was dropping out.
Yes.
And that was a blow. It was very sad.
Yes.
Cory and I knew each other before this race, and we got to know each other much better through the last number of months. And he's someone that genuinely gives you a sense of joy when you're lucky enough to run into him. I'll miss him. I'm also friends with his girlfriend, Rosario Dawson. Yeah, I sound so name droppery. I'm sorry about that. But Rosario and I were on a panel together a long time ago. And so I see Rosario with Cory, but what a loss to the field. It's really tough to see someone like that go. And no, I mean, we all just have to do more. I know Cory is still going to be in the fight for years and years to come. Oh, so she just said that I need to win and make Corey my VP. And there would certainly be far worse choices for VP than Corey, because you need someone you trust and know has the best interest of the American people at heart. Corey definitely has those things. I'm not a career politician, most of you know that. Maybe you know that from the commercials. How many of you saw a commercial? That makes us very happy, because we spent a lot of money on those commercials. It's a lot of money for us. So I was certainly not someone who grew up thinking I was going to run for president. Those were not the household conversations in like the gang house. It's like, you're going to be president someday. It was more like, clean up your room, you're terrible. So my parents immigrated here as graduate students from from Taiwan. They met at UC Berkeley, California. My father got his PhD in physics. He generated 69 US patents over his career. So when I was a kid, I thought everyone's dad had a PhD. So I went to other kids and was like, what's your dad's PhD in? And then one of them was like, here's what his PhD is in it. And I was like, oh no, what did I say wrong? And so I started to gather, oh, it's actually not very normal. And then when I got old enough to figure out what a patent was, I went to my dad, I was all eager. I was like, hey dad, how much do you get paid when you generate a patent? And I was gonna say lots and lots of money. And he said, I got paid about $200. And I was like, that doesn't seem so great. And he said, but I also get a salary so I can feed, house, and clothe you and your brother. Which was, shut up. Essentially. So to me, I tell this story in part because I feel like my family has lived the American dream, where they came here from Taiwan to have me and my brother and have a better life for us, and we've lived it. It's been great. But also I think that the US won too, because my father generated 69 US patents for GE and IBM, two great American companies. So I grew up living the American dream, being told, do well in school, get good grades, get a good job. So I did that. I went to law school, practiced law for 5 unhappy months, then left to start a business. How many of you have started a business or club or mailing list or organization? Raise your hand on that. So if you have your hand up, you know 2 things. Number 1, it's much harder than anyone ever lets on. And number 2, when someone asks you how it's going, what do you say?
Great.
Great.
Great. My business too went great until it failed. My parents told people I was still a lawyer. Then I became the head of an education company that grew to become #1 in the US, was bought by a bigger company in 2009. Now 2009 was the midst of the financial crisis. How many people were here in Iowa 11 years ago during the financial crisis? How was that time here in your part of the state? Difficult, rough. I was at another event and a 14-year-old boy said it was very bad, and I looked at him and I said, how do you even remember it? I was like, 4 years old. And then he said, well, my parents had to sell the house, so I remember it for that. So it was a really tough time in so much of the country, and I thought I had some insight as to why it had happened. It was because a lot of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to college and law school with had gone straight to Wall Street and come up with mortgage-backed securities and financial derivatives and things that ended up crashing the economy. So I thought, what a disaster that is. That's the opposite of what you want. So I came up with this vision that I thought would be much more productive and generative, where people that head to communities like Detroit, St. Louis, Birmingham, New Orleans, Cleveland, and help create businesses that would create jobs. How many of you all work at nonprofits? How many of you volunteer at a nonprofit? More of you should just pretend on that second one. Are you a nice person? Yes, I am. So this is where I start giving my wife full credit, where I come home to her, I'm like, hey, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to start a nonprofit. We're going to train hundreds of entrepreneurs and create thousands of jobs around the country. She was a very good sport about it. Starting a nonprofit, the way we did it was we took some of our savings and put it into a 501c3. Helped create several thousand jobs in 15 cities around the country over 7 years. I ran this nonprofit for 7 years. It was so successful, I was honored by the Obama administration multiple times, so I got to bring my wife to meet. It was a really great experience. My wife got to meet the president, so my in-laws were very excited about me that week. They're like, she did okay. She did okay, check it out. But unfortunately, I had this sinking feeling through my travels over these 7 years where in many places it felt like things were getting worse, not better. I was blown away by the gulf between parts of this country, where if you fly between, let's say, Michigan and Manhattan, or St. Louis and San Francisco, you felt like you were crossing dimensions and decades and ways of life, and not just time zones. But I was still surprised when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. How did you all react when that happened?
Badly, very badly.
Very badly, very sad. At another event, someone said bourbon. It was that kind of night for many of us. I was shocked too. I have family members and friends and neighbors who are very excited about his victory. And I know that's particularly true in Iowa because Donald Trump won this purple state by more than 8 points. So it would be impossible for you not to know people who were very happy about his winning in the bottom, and that the water was rushing out faster and faster. If you were to turn on cable news that night in 2016 or any night since then, you can ignore the cable news cameras in the back. If you were to turn on cable news at any point, why would you think that Donald Trump is our president today?
My theory has always been because people wanted something different than the status quo, and that was something different.
Change, sure. He is a form of change. What else?
Fear.
Cheer.
Fear, cheating. So how do you cheat precisely?
Well, he and Vladimir.
Russia. There we go. Yeah, Russia is pretty high on this list. Emails, Hillary Clinton, FBI, racism perhaps,
Social media and lies.
Facebook, social media, misinformation, Russia again, because they're obviously tied up with that. So
Here's the
these,
biggest one. Here's the biggest one. Fear is a tool.
fear.
Fear of the other rather than addressing the more complicated, difficult problems.
Yeah, agreed. Fear of the other. So these are the factors that have all been mixed together and presented to us as the reasons for Trump's election. But I'm a numbers guy, and so I went looking in the numbers for an explanation. And I found it. We automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years. And where were those jobs primarily located? Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 plus right here in Iowa. And if that list of states sounds familiar, those are all of the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. I have been to the towns here in Iowa who lost their factory jobs, the manufacturing jobs. After the plant closed, the shopping district closed, people started to leave, the school shrank, and the community has never recovered. I have seen the same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, over and over again. And unfortunately, what we did to those jobs, we are now doing to other jobs in other parts of the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Iowa? And why are those stores closing?
Amazon.
Amazon, that's right. Amazon is soaking up $20 billion in business every single year, closing 30% of America's stores and malls. The most common job in the economy is retail clerk. Average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $10 an hour. What is her next job when the store closes?
There isn't one.
How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year?
Zero.
Zero. For our communities. 20 billion out, 30% of stores and malls closed, most common job starts to disappear, we get zero back. You all see the self-serve kiosks in the grocery store, the fast food line, the pharmacy. More pervasive even than that. When you call the customer service line of a big company and you get a bot or software on the other end, I'm sure you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, representative, human, over and over again until you get someone, right? Raise your hand if that's what you do. Oh yeah, we hate that software. As soon as it comes, you're like, please let this company still employ a human at the other end of this. I'm gonna get to that human, let you have that in your mind. In 2 or 3 years, the software is going to sound like this. Hey Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? You might not even realize it's software. It's so fast, efficient, delightful. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour?
No jobs.
How many of you all know a truck driver here in Iowa? It's the most common job in 29 states, 3.5 million truckers. My friends in California are now working on robot trucks that can drive themselves. A robot truck just delivered 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this maiden voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you will see the story. At the end of the route, there was a giant stack of pancakes. No. What will the robot trucks mean for the 3.5 million Americans we all know who drive a truck for a living, or the 7 million plus Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? How many of you have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? I have too. It's got a very well-priced buffet. They say that 5,000 people stop there every day.
1,000 maybe?
We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you've heard one of our politicians say fourth industrial revolution? 3 seconds ago, right? Just now. And I'm barely a politician, Iowa, genuinely. My wife says I make a lousy politician because I'm a terrible liar. So these are the facts and figures I was going through in 2017. Trump wins. 2016, I say, oh my gosh, like I need to dig into this and figure out what just happened. 2017, I go through the data and I find there's a straight line up between the adoption line. Our country scapegoats immigrants for things that immigrants have next to nothing to do with. It's not like they're wall-to-wall immigrants that are going to be driving these trucks. It's going to be AI and technology. And so I go to our leaders in DC and I say, what are we going to do to help our people manage the greatest economic transition in our country's history? And what do you think the folks in DC said to me when I said, what are we going to do? So she just made this noise that was similar to this noise someone else made at an event 2 days ago, which was like the Scooby-Doo noise. It was like, oh. Yeah, it's like the I don't know noise. So the 3 big responses I got from our leaders in DC were these. Number 1, we should study this further. Number 2, we cannot talk about this. That sounded productive. And number 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you have heard someone say something like that? Oh yeah, it's very popular sounding. But I'm the numbers guy, so I said, hey, I look at these. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs?
Not very.
Not very. I'm anchoring you low so you know it's low, but you also know it's low because you know people. You know that if 1,000 people march out of a factory with age 49 on average, you know, they're not all going to be like, sign me up for coding school ASAP, and then like all pile into some, I mean, that's not human nature. The success rate of these federally funded retraining programs were between 0 and 15%. They're a total failure. Almost half of the workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest in manufacturing never worked again. Of that group, half filed for disability. You then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in these communities to the point where America's life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row? The Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. You have to go that far back, century. It's highly unusual in a developed country for your life expectancy to decline once. It's ordinarily going up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier all the time. But here in the US, it's gone down and then down and then down again. When I said this to the folks in DC, they shrugged and were like, I guess we'll get better at the retraining programs then. One person said something that brought me here to you all today, here in Iowa. Well, how many days do we have until voting? 21 days to voting. So I was in DC over 2 years ago, and one of the leaders there said this to me. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here will do anything about the issues you're describing, because fundamentally this is a town of followers, not leaders. The only way we will do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring it crashing down on our heads. And I heard this, and I heard the truth in it. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years with the wave. I know it does not feel like it, you're just living your lives, but I've done the math. Do you know how many Californians each of you is worth? Californians each. So if you look around this room, how many of us are there? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 300 people here in this room. If there are 40 people in this room, that's still one football stadium full of Californians. That's the power you all have to change the future of this country. It's the power to do something that other Americans can only dream about. Most Americans look up and they see our government as a series of pipes clogged with millions and millions of dollars of lobbyist cash, and they say there is nothing they can do to change that. They are generally correct. There is next to nothing that they can do. But you can. You and you alone have the ability to flush the pipes clean in 21 days. So the question is, how do you flush the pipes? First, you put someone into the top of government that doesn't owe corporations a dime, raised $16.5 million last quarter in increments of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. But there's no corporate PAC money, just someone who wants to do right by the American people. This is how we get our government working for us again. It's one big reason why Trump won. I'm for term limits for members of Congress. Their goal should be to get something done on our behalf and then come home. Their goal should not be to crouch there in DC for as long as possible. I will tell you all, after I'm your president for 8 years, I will do everything I can for you and your families, and then you will never hear from me again. And I will not stay in that town one day longer than required. Like after we clean up and transition to the next administration, I'll be like, out of DC. I'm not a big fan of that town. We have to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for you, to work for your families, to work for your community. And the message I'd have for you all today is that if it's not working for you, it's not working. And you have the power to change it. Now, I've talked a bit about this fourth industrial revolution. Iowa has in many ways been at the forefront. You saw this transform your farms first, and then it went to your factories and manufacturing facilities. Now it's on your main streets. And eventually, not too long from now, it will be on your highways. What we have to do is reverse the tide and actually make it so the economy revolves around us and our well-being rather than the corporate profits and the cash that is heading to the big companies that own our capital. So what does that vision look like? If you've seen the ads or seen anything about the campaign, you know that I'm running for president saying every American should get $1,000 a month. How many of you saw that? And I know the first time you saw that, you thought, that sounds like a gimmick, that's too good to be true, that will never happen. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of our country. He called it the citizen's dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose son I sat with in Atlanta, fought for this in the 60s, and it is what he was fighting for when he was killed in 1968, guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. It was so mainstream in the 1960s that 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, endorsed a plan just like this. And then it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in '71 under Nixon. It was called a Family Assistance Plan, with a guaranteed an income floor for all Americans. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? Alaska. And how does Alaska pay for it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
Technology, data, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? If Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, and the trillion-dollar tech companies that are paying out of zero near zero taxes. You see how it's working? You know this feeling you have that your communities are getting sucked dry and somehow like the rewards are going elsewhere? You feel that way because that is exactly what is happening. How many of you all are parents like me and my wife? If you are a parent, you have had this sinking feeling that our kids are going to be experiencing a future that is less stable, less secure, less prosperous than the lives that we have had. Now, a lot of the time we think about that as climate change, which is very, very true and real. But it's also in the numbers. If you were born in the 1940s in the US, there was a 93% chance that you were going to be better off than your parents. That's the American dream that many of us have lived that brought my family here. If you were born in the 1990s, which might be some of your children, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and it's declining fast. That's why we feel the way we do. This is one reason why many of your kids feel like they have to leave your community or even your state to try and find better opportunities. This is what we need to turn around. So in this context, you get our fair share, tiny, tiny slice of every Amazon sale, every Google search, Facebook ad, eventually every robot. How much of it would get spent right here in Iowa? Most of it, not all of it. Some of you might get your own Netflix password for change. But most of it would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and appliances, home repair, medical bills, Little League signups, local nonprofits, religious organizations, visiting your kids. This is the trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. This would make us stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, and would give our kids a real path forward. I've run organizations for the last couple of decades, and there are 3 things you can do with your people. Number 1, you do nothing, and they leave you within a year. Number 2, you tell them how great they are all the time. Works for about a year, and then they leave you somewhere between year 1 and 2. And then the third thing you can do is actually invest in them, compensate them, give them raises, and then they may stay with you forever. What we have to do is we have to actually invest in our kids. We have to be able to look at them and say, your country loves you, your country values you, and we're going to prove it to you. Right now we're saying to our kids that they're inheriting this American dream, but they don't feel it. They're actually too smart. Like, you know, they're not fooled. So we have to take 21 short days. This is what a human-centered economy looks like. Right now we have corporate profits going up and life expectancy going down. Which do we think is more important? That's right. Oh, she's right in terms of the way we're behaving. Like DC can't even see life expectancy. DC's just staring at corporate profits. Washington, D.C. today is the richest city in our country. Think about that. What do they produce? And what do I mean by that? Why do we employ hundreds of thousands of people in the most expensive metro in the country? Why wouldn't we move some of those jobs to Iowa, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, where people would love those jobs? We'd save billions of dollars because all of a sudden costs would be much more reasonable. And I would argue that the decisions that the agencies make would be better because they would live someplace normal. Among normal, we have to rewrite the economy to work for us and our communities. Right now, the economic measures are dropping us off a cliff. Robot trucks will be great for corporate profits, but they'll be terrible for many of us. What we need to do is we need to line up our measurements with how we are doing. Instead of just worshiping corporate profits and GDP, we should be measuring our progress through our own wellness and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, clean air and clean water, how many of us can retire in quality circumstances, how our kids are doing. I know how wrong our current economic measures are, in part because of my own family. My wife is at home with our 2 boys right now, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work calculated at in our economic measurements every year? That gets a 0. Evelyn and the stay-at-home parents around the country, 0. Caregivers for ailing loved ones, 0. Make people stronger, 0. 98% of artists, 0. Local journalists, more and more, 0. We put 2,000 local papers out of business over the last number of months. It's very hard to have a functioning democracy if you don't have any local news. And those papers have disappeared because, well, the businesses have closed, but also all the advertising revenue went up to the internet, and they don't have any other way to pay for themselves. So these are the things that we claim to value most dearly in our lives: our families, our communities, our democracy, and we are allowing them to get zeroed out one by one by one. This is what you all have to change. You have to make the case to the rest of the country in 21 days that economic value and human value are not the same things. You can make the case to the rest of the country that we each have intrinsic value as citizens and as Americans. That's a message that is extraordinarily overdue and one that the rest of the country is waiting for. This is how someone, frankly, you never heard of, I don't know, 8 months ago or whatnot, has already outcompeted half a dozen sitting senators, governors, Congress people, is because I see the real nature of the problems that got Donald Trump into office and then how we can actually solve them and move the country forward. Donald Trump today is our president because he had a very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? We are already great. Remember that? It's been a long 3 years, I know. But it's about to end. Now, this is the right response because we have to acknowledge the depth and severity and reality of the problems that our communities face. They are real. But Donald Trump's solutions were the opposite of what we need. What were his solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. Iowa, you know we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work and our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much. Math is an acronym. What does it stand for? Make America think harder. That's right. That is your job in 21 days, Iowa. It's your job to move this country, not left, not right, but forward. And I know that's just where you're going to take us. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Now we have a question. I think you had one. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I did. Not to say this in a braggadocious way.
Sure.
But,
Oh, we got a mic for you. Look at that.
not to say this in a braggadocious way, but if we took only, say, like 5% of all the trillionaire companies, like 5% of what they should pay for taxes, we should easily be able to stop a lot of poverty.
I totally agree. And you know the great thing about it is if you alleviate poverty, if I give $1,000 to the average American family, how much of it's going to get spent in the community? Pretty much all of it. And it's not even going to get spent once. It's going to circulate through the economy several times. If I manage to sneak into Jeff Bezos' account and sneak in $1,000 in there, how much impact would that have on the economy? Zero. No one would even notice. You'd be changing a digit in one of the accounts. You know what I mean? So it's not braggadocious at all. It's very smart. It's common sense. We all know that the trickle-up economy would work. We all know that the money in our hands would actually solve many of the problems that our politicians claim to want to solve. We know that the money would actually go right back into our community. The biggest illustration of this, and I was so disgusted by this, I quit my job, started a nonprofit, and ran it for 7 years. We had a choice between bailing out the banks for $4 trillion and keeping our people in their homes. And which do we choose?
The banks.
The banks. Do you all remember voting for that? No. None of us voted for that. You think they put that up to a vote, you think anyone would be like, oh yeah, the banks. Of course not. But they had, and does anyone remember them looking around being like, I don't know where we get the money for these banks? I mean, maybe we thought that, but they had like $4 trillion. And then we look around and being like, well, if the homeowner gets into trouble, it's like, you're on your own. Bank got into trouble, it's like they brought out the checkbook and then some. So that's, to me, the biggest illustration of how warped our priorities have become, how out of touch our government has become. Again, I was so struck by how corrupt this was that I said, like, I can't do nothing. Like, I will now spend 7 years traveling the country to try and do some good. And then I realized that the system needs much, much more than what I was doing. Yeah, sir?
addition to the universal basic income, in addition to the universal basic income, what's an appropriate role for the federal government to help us through the economic disruption that's going to happen in the next 10 years?
There are a number of things the federal government should do to set the stage. Now, I'm someone who's mindful of, frankly, politicians over-promising. Like if I say I'm going to educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future, I actually cannot do that. If I say I'm going to put $1,000 a month in the hands of every American, I can do that. The federal government is exceptional at sending large numbers of checks to large numbers of people across their life. It's one of its few core competencies. You should like lean into that core competency and like take it as far as it'll go. All right, so that's one big thing I would say the federal government must do. Other things the federal government must do: set measures of our economy that actually tell us how we're doing around our own well-being, mental health, childhood success. It's going to be much easier for the federal government to have those measures in place. And as your president, I would let you know what those numbers look like every year at the State of the Union. I would be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck that has all the data. So if you like that, then I'm definitely your guy. The third big thing the government has to do is start fighting climate change in a real way. Because there's no other entity that could even make a dent in something that level. So then you have to say, well, what do you do to fight climate change? Number one, you have to put a price on carbon emissions so that if you're polluting, then you have to internalize the cost somewhat. You should zero out the subsidies that go to fossil fuel companies and move them straight to wind and solar and ethanol, natural gas, and some other things that are cleaner. You have to try and get our carbon emissions down, and simultaneously do the hardest thing under the sun, which is get the rest of the world's 85% of carbon emissions also to trend downward. Right now, the Chinese government is going to African governments and saying, hey, we've got a coal-burning power plant for you. What do you think? And what does the African government say?
Sure thing.
Sure thing, I love it. Because they're just looking for energy, they don't care about emissions. But we've all seen the images out of Australia. Oh my gosh, it's like a science fiction movie come to life. You know, a billion animals dead. Can you imagine how much carbon that put into the atmosphere too? It's like, imagine like the biggest, yeah, it's unfathomable. So we have to try and get the rest of the world to go in the same direction. But here's the biggest thing I would say. Politicians are being irresponsible when they say we must prevent climate change. You all know climate change is already here. We are on the curve. Saw the floods last 4 years, been the 4 warmest years in recorded history. And so now we're in a position where we have to say, if a community gets devastated or hurt by climate change, who should be trying to protect them and make them whole? And saying that community or family is on their own, to me, is where we are now, and it's ridiculous. Because obviously the individual community did not cause climate change. They're just now a victim of it. So we need to invest hundreds of billions of dollars today on making our communities stronger, safer, more resilient, more adaptive. This should create many, many new jobs because there's number one, if you live in a country, which we do, where 78% of us are living paycheck to paycheck and almost half of us can't afford an unexpected $500 bill, and you go to that family and say, we need to fight climate change, what do a lot of them say? I can't afford it. I can't pay next month's rent, like, next year, next decade has to wait in line. So number one, we have to lift the mindset of scarcity and get the boot off of people's throats so they actually feel comfortable and secure in their future. So then when you say we need to fight climate change, they'll say, yes, we do. The other thing is that we have to get rid of this ridiculous tug of war that fighting climate change will destroy jobs, hurt the economy, make things more expensive. I'm the numbers guy. Do you know, let's just put this out here. What would the cost of climate change be in dollars? He said incalculable, which is probably right, because it also includes thousands and thousands of lives. So you'd actually have to put a dollar sign on the lives. But
like the zero balance in the end, because regardless of what you have to spend to get there, every life is worth a certain amount of money. Every life you save is worth something. So if you take the lives saved and balance it against how much you spend, in the end you should be coming up pretty much the zero balance.
that is thematically correct. The other big thing, though, is like, what is the cost of climate change if we do nothing? directly just in monetary terms. Yeah, trillions and trillions of dollars. So to give you a sense of the scale of the economy, our economy is $21 trillion a year. So if you think about the impact of climate change over time, it's tens of trillions of dollars, easily. So then you realize that inaction is actually very, very expensive. And that if you start investing hundreds of billions of dollars, it's actually cost effective. The problem is that this multi-trillion-dollar cost of climate change is not factored in our numbers. So what you have to do, that's one reason why putting a price on pollution is very important, because then it starts getting included in the numbers. And then people can see that actually investing is cheaper. Like, this is the major thing we have to help convince our fellow Americans of. One of the biggest farces is that we don't have the money to do these things. Because again, $4 trillion for the banks, $1.5 trillion for the rich companies. We have the resources to do right by ourselves and our people. It will actually make us richer, stronger, healthier, and make the economy significantly stronger. So those are the big things the government, I think, should do.
Andrew, one more.
It looks like I've got one more. I picked someone very, very, no, I'm kidding. You can pick whoever you like.
Since you're a numbers guy, how do we fix the healthcare and the big pharma? Because all they want is money out of us, especially with us. Sorry.
You're not wrong. I'm just thinking where to start. I'm going to illustrate the drugs as a problem. So first, our healthcare system feels the way it does because it's not actually designed to make us stronger and healthier. What's it designed to do? Make maximal profits and revenue for the drug companies, the insurance companies, and the life companies. It's pretty good at those things. We're spending $3.6 trillion a year on a system that's underperforming relative to any other system in the world. So how do we make it better? So I'm going to use drug prices as the illustration. This is one thing. Number one, we should make TV advertisements for prescription drugs illegal. There's no public health benefit, it increases the prices of drugs, and the next time I have to hear a horrifying list of side effects, it'll be like one too many times. I'll no window. But that's that. No, I mean, I've got 2 boys, and I plan on living for a long, long time. But that's not the primary driver of the crazy drug prices. The main drivers of the crazy drug prices are that the drug lobbyists have the run of our government, and so our government's not even allowed to negotiate for lower prices on our behalf. All right, so here's the 5-step way we break the backs of the drug companies and get the prices down. Number one, we say our government, of course, can negotiate for lower prices on our behalf. That would be a very big step. Number two, international reference pricing, where they're not allowed to charge us 2, 3, 4 times as much as they charge citizens of other countries for drugs that we helped subsidize in the first place. It's very, very crazy what we've allowed to happen. Number three, if they fail at number two, then we can forcibly license the drug from them. And number four, manufacture it ourselves in a public facility. And number five, we are allowed to import competitive drugs from other countries and markets. Do you think this plan would work? This is just about the only plan that would work, because the drug companies only understand one language. It's just dollars and cents. If we all went and stood outside their doors and said, do the right thing, we'd be there forever and nothing would happen. But if you say, hey, it's actually going to start hitting our bottom line if you keep gouging us, then that's the only way their behavior would change. So then, how do you break the backs of the drug lobbyists so you can make this happen in the first place? Number one, you get someone into the White House who, again, just wants to do the right thing and get out of there. And I have like zero qualms about crushing the drug companies because they've been getting away with it. And then number two, we have to retake our government from the lobbyists. So I have a friend I grew up with who went to work on Capitol Hill for good reasons. And when he got there, he said he would never become a lobbyist. What is the end of this story? Today he's a lobbyist. That's right. So how do we change these things about our capital? You make it so that regulators of industries are not allowed to work at those industries afterwards for 10 years, which makes them essentially useless. And you start that at the top with the president. The president should not be able to give paid speeches for personal gain after they leave the office.
I love it.
Make it a one-way street. Then you say, to override these corporate interests that have taken over our government, we should put 100 democracy dollars in the hands of every voter. Right now, 5% or less of Americans contribute to political campaigns. If everyone had 100 free dollars that you could give, what would that percentage be?
80.
Not 100%. People are lazy, but maybe like, even if it's like 50 or 60%, you would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 4 or 5 to 1. Because then you make the legislators actually be like, wait a minute, if I get 10,000 people behind me, that's $1 million. And then the lobbyist is like, I've got $50,000 for you. Be like, I don't want to touch that, because then the people are going to be like, why are you taking the $50,000 from these guys? I want to set term limits in Congress, and here's how you pass it. This would totally work. You go to the people in Congress and say 12-year term limits for all members of Congress, but everyone here gets grandfathered in and you are exempt. They would pass that the next day, because then they're all like, hey, look at this. Like, all these new people come in, and like, if I stick around, I can stick around. But then you hit the fast forward button, 12, 15 years, those people are out of there anyway, and then you have term limits just freaking running, right? So, as you can tell, I have many, many big plans to turn the ship around, but I need your help. I need you to get the word out. I need you to commit to caucus. I need you to spread the word to other magical Iowans that are also worth 1,000 normal voters in another part of the country. Because we don't have unlimited time. If we let this opportunity go, what happens over the next 4 years? More stores close, the AI gets smarter, the robot trucks actually start showing up in earnest. We have to turn this around this time. We have to turn this thing around in 21 short days. I'm asking for your help, and I cannot wait for the inauguration party after we win. Thank you all very much.
Andrew, stick around, answer questions, take some photos. We are going to do a little press, try and balance all of that. You guys know how this is.
You know, everything on that table free?
I believe so, yes sir.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, streams, this is what we're asking to do right now. It is Andrew Yang's birthday. Oh, where's my connection? You guys hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. Real quickly, I need to grab something.
Hey, you're the guy that's going out taking one of the pictures. That's awesome.
Andrew Yang's birthday, which means we're asking all of you right now to donate to Andrew Yang $45 for his birthday. It is Andrew Yang's 45th birthday, using the link in the right now, which every single dollar goes directly to Andrew Yang. And if you aren't comfortable with using that link, just go to yang2020.com/donate, because that will work as well. And then we also, at 6 p.m. Central Time, we have a town hall at Drake University, which we will be covering live here on the Zach and Ice Show. But in the meantime, we need you to donate $45 for Andrew Yang's 45th birthday. For every $5,000 that we raise through the yanggame.com referral link, we are going to be giving away signed merch. In fact, we've already raised almost $65,000 through this link for Andrew Yang, which means we have already given away about... I can spam as much as I want, it's my channel. Which means we have given away about... So, I will stop spamming the link, and now we're going to go find something interesting to do. How's it going?
Oh, you're talking right now?
Yeah, but you're good.
I thought it was pointed that way.
No, you're good.
Hey, Zach and Matt Show. Hope you're all getting involved in as many ways as possible. Phone banking, donating, calling, and canvassing.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I didn't know he was going to point the camera at me, so now
Of course. Shaving with Tolly. Check him out on YouTube.
Aw, shucks.
One of our most committed, dedicated, passionate members of the Yang Gang here.
I'll do a quick plug for this. So you guys know, I'm running 500 miles through the early states with this flag. That's 8.3 miles a day. I have to take the Yang campaign for every marathon's length. that I run. I've done the math. It's $19.08. All right, I'm just trying to inspire people to go all out because we got to make this happen. And I want to tell
Absolutely.
Iowans and New Hampshire folks and people around the country that Andrew Yang is running to win, and we need to take him seriously. So you can check that out at runningtowin2020.com.
Runningtowin2020.com.
We're gonna make this happen. It's on us in the Yang Gang. It's
Yes,
on
it
us.
is. And if you come to Iowa and you come to the ground, you quickly realize that most people are undecided.
They are.
And it's going to be like, I saw this one article. This woman was like, I like Yang, I like Warren, I like Booker, but I think I'm just going to go with my gut feeling on caucus day. And which group is she going to go to? The one that's like a bunch of, or like the passionate group of like Yang supporters, you know what I mean?
Well, if we can show strength, if
Exactly.
we can get out and knock enough doors.
Yeah, that's the big
ours
thing.
to take.
We just need a super strong ground game between now and February 3rd.
Yeah, it's so doable.
It is. It really is.
We make Yang Month happen, dude. I was campus against Sioux City. Dude, it's so fucking undecided.
It is, truly. Even more so in New Hampshire. That's my perception. I've knocked in both states.
Yeah.
I think we're really gonna perform really well in New Hampshire for sure. But I think Iowa for sure is up to grabs. And if we can do a great job with Yang Month, we can definitely win. When I came in, I thought we could do like top 3, top 4. But after Yang Week, and if we can do Yang Month, we can definitely win. People are undecided. Like you see it here. Like the message is resonating. The way my impression has been like people know of Andrew Yang. They watch his commercials, but they just haven't. They don't know what we know. You know?
Yeah,
And-
they
and
just
I
have
think
a base level.
very basic, yeah. And I think like once you explain first like why we need the freedom dividend, and you make them see and like realize and like about how it's affecting their communities, like it really resonates, and they're a lot more receptive to it. And then once you explain how to fund it, like
He's very easy to sell. It's very easy to sell voters on Yang. Just, I mean, if you can get them to
YouTube.
YouTube Andrew Yang, and they become Yang Gang.
yeah, that's one thing that I always try to do. Like, you know, even you know, I tell them like, there's no way I can convince you in this 5-minute interaction. The only way that you're gonna convince yourself is if you give them a fair chance to just watch them on YouTube, because that's how most of us got converted into the Yang Gang. And if people just watch one of the podcasts that we watch, like for sure when we come back and knock on their door in two weeks or less, you know they're gonna be Yang Gang for sure. So
Is this streaming right now
Yes, sir.
on YouTube?
Yes, sir.
Guys, make sure you like the video. So more people see this.
yeah.
Oh, parents so bad. Excuse me, sir. I have a question for you. Would you be interested in doing an interview on your thoughts, having just listened to Andrew speak?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Let me, I don't want to hold you up too long here, but it's like a live stream and the connection's very like patchy.
I see.
Okay, we're good, we're good. All right, so what is your name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Daniel Dolan.
Schoenfelder.
Schoenfelder, sorry.
There you go. That's fine.
So, is this the first time that you've heard Andrew Yang speak?
This is the first time I've heard Andrew Yang speak.
Uh-huh. And how many other candidates have you seen speak, if you have seen any speak?
So this presidential candidacy, this is the third one.
Third one. And before coming in here, where do you think you would have ranked Andrew going to the caucus? Third?
I filled out my card third, right? Yeah, and I moved him up to first.
You moved him up to first.
I did.
That's what we like to hear. What in his speech resonated with you?
I'm a numbers guy as well, and so if one of the things that I was looking for before is change, I can see a lot of opportunity for change here as well.
All right. Well, I appreciate you talking to me. Unfortunately, like, it's not even on right now. So, you're good. Have a great night. Okay, guys, the internet was just crapped out where I was, but, and it's still crapped out, unfortunately. But the guy I just spoke to, he had ranked Andrew Yang third. He had never seen Andrew speak before. He came in ranking Andrew Yang third. and he now ranks Andrew Yang first. Unfortunately, anytime I walk in the middle of the room, we get terrible internet.
Signal. It's terrible over here.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Internet does improve over here.
What's your handle? I forgot. MARC. Okay.
I like it.
What's yours?
ZAR.
ZAR.
There you go.
Nice. Let's get it, man. Oh, you're primary contact for Reno.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. I'm one of the primary contacts for Metro Detroit, but I just can't do that anymore because I'm just traveling.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping to pass it on to someone. But yeah, this is amazing, man. I love seeing the crowds.
Are you like a volunteer?
Alright, well, I'm going to mingle around a bit more. I'm going to go fuck with Sanchez.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
Probably, yeah.
I harass staffers for a living. That's what I do.
So keep it over here. That's what I'm trying to do.
From LA. I bet you're very Your camera's on one leg? I wasn't before, but I am.
Alright, so what is your name?
Sam Hub.
Sam Hub. So, is this the first time that you've heard Andrew speak?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, I've seen him on.
Yeah, in person, yeah.
First time in person.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that he was going to be here about 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock today? How'd you find that out, actually?
Actually, I was going through Facebook and it brought him up and, you know, said,
Awesome.
he's going to be here now. It's like, get a bulletin board out there. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was planned like late because with the debate, they weren't sure. I don't think they were completely sure. But how many other candidates have you heard speak before this event?
Let's see. I listened to Clinton, both of them. Bill and Rose. And they were the last ones actually.
Okay. And
they had Trump yeah, probably wouldn't have been a good idea. I think.
So, before coming into the speech, how did you feel about Andrew? Like, where would you have ranked him for the caucus?
Oh, after I heard him talk and things he wants to do to this country, for me it's hands down.
Hands down?
Yeah, he needs to be our president. That joke that's in there, he bought his way in, and I think somehow he's going to buy his way in. And I don't know, something needs to be done there somehow.
Well, I'm glad to hear it,
It's not
sir.
possible.
Thanks for Andrew's going to gaggle over there, so I gotta run. Thank you for speaking with me, though.
Yeah. I mean, you guys got good ideas on moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can't be in place. And it's going to get worse.
Oh, no, that's my bad.
I'm really excited about February 3rd. It's hard to get
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's from the campaign.
Oh, is it? Oh, they clearly do. I joke about it all the time, but we're here for a reason. If you do well here in Iowa, it can give you a launching pad
through the primaries and all the way to the White House, and the opposite is true too. If you don't do well here, we're going to see any number of candidates drop out, either before voting starts or right after voting starts here in Iowa.
But you would change the calendar if you could?
I don't have a problem with the calendar. I think anyone who wants to recommend any changes to the calendar has to have something very, very real and concrete. But one of the things I've seen is that if you had another state that had to serve the same kind of role as Iowa and New Hampshire, the people would not know what to do because they don't have the same level of political culture built up that exists here in Iowa and New Hampshire. Here they're really used to having candidates into their living rooms, into their local town halls and meeting halls. It would be very difficult for another state to play the same role without having a significant difference.
Well, I'm not making the debate stage. How much does that hurt you?
I'm laughing because you probably saw we just got another 5% poll on the way in here. I mean, we're at 5% here in Iowa and growing, 5% in New Hampshire and growing. We're well positioned to compete and even win through the primaries coming forward. We've been growing faster than any other campaign, and not making the debate, while a disappointment, it's not going to hold us back.
What kind of accountable programming are you going to have as like while debating? That you can see catch your eye.
Yeah, we should have an announcement tomorrow about something that we're doing.
Is there any clue that you can give us about what it might be?
You know, unfortunately, it's for tomorrow's president.
Mr. Yang, did you see the CNN report today from the Warren camp kind of accusing Bernie Sanders of having this conversation with her back in 2018 about telling her that the woman can't be president? What do you make of that story? Do you think
I have not seen that story. I would be stunned that anyone would put that out as a legitimate point of view. Yeah, I haven't seen the story. But I wouldn't be surprised.
Do you think that America is ready for
I think that one wonderful thing about this country is that it's the first time for everything, and I think that we're overdue for a woman president.
Andrew, about the debate, do you think it's a dead issue now getting into tomorrow's debate? Because in the past, networks have revisited the rules, right? Rand Paul, for example, 4 years ago made it out in a last-minute poll. There's going to be in the data poll tomorrow. Are you making any more protests to the NCA? You're pretty done.
Wow. Well, Dave, I will say that I plan to be in town, and that if there was a podium, you know, I'm optimistic that we will continue to show at 5% or higher in, for example, this Nevada poll that's coming up tomorrow. We were at 5% in Nevada as a poll that we released. I would love to be on the debate stage tomorrow. If the DNC shows any flexibility on that, I would be right there. They don't even need on one of the ends. They could put me over in one of like the corners, like off on my own, like I was like the kid who, you know, I don't know, like had a cold or something. But you know, I don't anticipate them doing that. Which is too bad, because if they run more polls, I clearly would have qualified. It's the will of voters here in Iowa. It's the will of voters around the country that I am on that stage. Over 400,000 Americans have donated to my campaign, so it's very frustrating that I'm not there. But it's going to be even more frustrating after I make the next debate stage and demonstrate that this one was just a blip.
like a Senator Warren Castro duo?
Well, Corey's going to be tied up in Washington for quite some time in impeachment proceedings. So, you know, I don't anticipate that his schedule is going to allow for that kind of thing anytime soon. But obviously, I miss Corey and I'd love to see him again.
Or plus, would you consider inviting him out to the
I mean, sure, if Corey was available, I'd love it.
Some of these senators were running, they're going to be stuck in Washington for impeachment, like you said. What do you think? Do you think that's an advantage for you going into these Thank you.
Drawn to D.C. for the trial, that they won't be in the field to educate voters. I'm obviously going to use that time to meet voters where they are. I'm excited to campaign here in Iowa throughout January. I also said that I think that if you're running for president and you're a senator, you should feel free to continue to campaign. That you shouldn't necessarily feel bound to be in Washington for the impeachment trial. I know that's something of a controversial perspective, but to me, Donald Trump in 2020, and that takes precedence to me even over the impeachment trial, particularly because right now, 0 Republicans have signaled any openness to impeaching the president, and so this is likely a foregone conclusion.
Armando? Yeah, Mr. Yang, your supporters have been very adamant about being vocal, about their displeasure with the DNC for leaving you out of the debate, and also with the media, hashtag Yang Media Blackout. What is your supporters feel neglected by the Democratic Party and ignored by the mainstream media?
I'm so grateful to our supporters who helped drive this campaign. We have 0 corporate PAC money, it's all grassroots funding. I share their frustration. I want to be on that debate stage tomorrow night. I think we earned it. Right now, the best thing we can do is continue to drive the campaign forward right here in Iowa and New Hampshire. Make sure we make the next debate stage, and more importantly, make sure that we have a history-making performance when the voting starts on February 3rd. That's where my focus is. I understand the frustration. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who helped get me on every debate stage up to this one. We did earn a spot on this debate stage too. I think if the DNC showed any flexibility or even rationality, they would see that.
How did you feel waking up this morning in Iowa, away from your family, on your birthday, and not being on the debate stage? What's your mood like?
So it's my birthday today. I'm 45 today. And I woke up to a whole flurry of text messages from friends from every part of my life that have my cell phone number being like, happy birthday, man, happy birthday, happy birthday. So, you know, it's still a cause for celebration. This is the best possible version of this period of the campaign where we're fighting here in Iowa with a chance to win and make history. So I'm thrilled. I mean, I miss my family, but you know, I'm fighting for them. I'm having a great time.
Last one, Robin, do you have one?
Yeah, you shut that.
Do I look sad?
No.
Good.
You look good.
Excellent.
Like you said, you've gotten 5% on 2 recent polls. Do you feel like you still have enough time before the Iowa caucus to build up necessary momentum?
Oh yeah, I mean, look at it. Like, so many Iowan caucus goers say they're up in the air, undecided, is growing. Someone just came to me today and said that he decided to caucus for me today, but he said that he was leaning that way because of the Iowa PBS broadcast that just aired on Friday. And so Iowans are still making up their minds. That's not just me saying, that's what the numbers clearly show. So we're poised to grow and grow here. We're going to be well past 5% by the time the voting starts.
Thank you guys. We appreciate you. We love you. See you, Drake.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, Drake should be epic. Epic.
Okay, stream. That's going to be the end of the stream. We're going to be live back in Drake, but I need to get out of here and get to Drake. So we're ending this now. See you at 6 p.m. Central Time right here at Drake University.